All right, welcome. This is Team 6 from CIT 261. In our team is Chris, uh, Jordan, Shannon, and me, Adam. We're going to go through our original scope from the elevator pitch that Chris gave at the beginning of the class, and how we've kept that and how we've strayed from it. Then we're going to go over the technologies that we've used, and then a short demo, and each of us will explain our parts in the app. Okay, so the original scope was to create a scheduling application that had a clickable calendar where users could click days that would bring them to a hourly view that they could schedule appointments, and then there would be an administrator that could see those appointments that the users have set. We planned to use a database to store the data, transitions in CSS to switch from day to day or load the calendar in a nice way. We plan to use local data to store the user information, like the name, today's date, and the user's email. We plan to use Ajax to hit the database and to make those requests and receive things back. Events for JavaScript to have onClicks actually do those Ajax requests and things we mentioned, and advanced CSS to be able to see which appointments were whose, and see things that were clickable. The things that we changed from all of this is we got rid of the admin view idea for now. We were planning on doing that at the very end. Once we started, we saw how complicated this was to communicate to each other, so we decided to postpone that, and we did not complete that as of today. The rest is pretty much exactly the same, except local storage stored a little bit different type of data. It didn't have to store the date. We were able to do that a different way. All the CSS and everything else we mentioned is almost the same, just with more detail. So now I'm going to go over the technologies that we used in our app. First of all, you can see GitHub was used extensively. And we set up our site to automatically pull from GitHub every minute. Sometimes it broke, but sometimes it worked. JavaScript was probably the main thing. This and CSS that we used were the most lines of code, and all of us dug into it. JavaScript was used to really transfer all the data between everything. And JSON, JavaScript object notation, was used to store the data in the database, and we stringified it and sent it off to the database. Also, the database would return to the JavaScript stringified data that we parsed and displayed on the page somehow. We used MySQL, but I'll talk about that later. That wasn't really the main point of this class, but that's a database. We used Ajax requests to communicate with the database and receive things back, like we mentioned. CSS was used to transition, to prettify everything. When the user would click next day, that would transition. HTML was used. We used JavaScript to manipulate the HTML. We used very little DOM manipulation because it was really hard to get the app going at first. We did use it a little bit for changing the onClicks and deactivating links. PHP was used on the back end, but again, that's not the main point of this class, but that was used for the web services. And that's it. Now I'll do a little short demo of the app. So we put it on Bluehost, and just this link. You'll notice it's a single page app, so everything stays on this URL. It'll automatically start it today, and the rest of the days in the future are green, because you wouldn't really want to set an appointment in the past. So I'll click today. You can see there are already dates that, oh, yeah, we set a lot of appointments. None of these are mine, and you'll see how I can tell in the future. These right here, which have this radioactive glow, are my appointments, these two. We have a CSS class that does that. We set a ton of appointments, but this is a loop going from 7 to 17 o'clock. We're using military time in the background. So if I wanted to set an appointment on the 13th for 7 a.m., I would check this, and you'll notice this showed up here at the bottom. I'll click to schedule an appointment. My name was pulled out of local storage, my email as well, these things you would want to be unique each time, so I'll type a message and a location, basically place, and I'll schedule that appointment by clicking here. And you'll notice it just showed up right here, and it's glowing because it was my appointment. And also a little message down here that says, on December 13th, you schedule an appointment for the following hours. You can also schedule appointments for multiple hours, which is something we added in recently, which was originally part of the plan. And it'll set the same message for all of these. And I'll go over more of how this part works in the database on my end. But we'll start with Chris explaining what he did. Jordan explaining what he did, Shannon what she did, and then me, Adam, will explain what I did after that. So we'll switch to Chris.
Thank you, Adam. For this project, I actually played the part of the project manager, so to speak. I came up with the original design. I created basic templates, which were later filled in and modified by various team members. I created the algorithm that created the actual calendar facing. I put together all the JavaScript that worked in kind of an array of dates based on the month that was shown. In the demo, Adam didn't click next month to show that the previous month button comes up after you're not in the current month anymore. That was a little bit of creative engineering on my part. Yeah, essentially this project is my brainchild, but I was more than happy to share it with the rest of the team. I directed a lot of the design process even after the original mock-ups were done and we had a demo running, even before we had the add appointment functionality. I also created one of the web services that pulls the appointments by date, and unfortunately the part that I meant to finish up by this time, which was changing the color of the date in the calendar facing, is not yet complete. I'm hoping to get it done before the project is officially turned in. But I think that's a pretty good high-level view of what I've done. Jordan?
Okay, sounds good. Well, Chris is just being modest. He actually helped every one of us with our projects, but that being said, so I was assigned the daily.js file. And what I did is I created the functionality for daily.js so that it displayed properly. It looped through all the different hours from 7 a.m. all the way till 5 to 6 p.m. and then we obviously use military time to give those unique IDs so that we have it in our database. I also created the JavaScript code that lists off if an hour is available or is not available. Created the functionality that to remove like a button when another day is clicked or to return to a home page, so that it would get rid of, because it's all on one page, we had to do a lot of finicky work of making sure that we didn't have all the code display multiple times. I also created the toggle hour function, which basically its functionality was to, if a checkbox was clicked, by default starting out when they get to that page, the toggle hour function says that all the checkboxes by default are false. And as they go about checking them, they switch to true, and then if you check it again, it will switch back to false. So it did that, and then we formatted it in a way inside of the what was the function called? I can't remember. It was part of the list times function where we formatted it in a way that we were able to insert all that information into the database. So that's kind of a brief overview. Oh, I guess I created the form for when they click to schedule an appointment. I had some help from everybody else on that though, and that basically covers, I think, everything I helped with. I mean, we all helped with little things, but that was kind of my assignment. So anyway, I'll turn the time over to Shannon for all the awesome stuff.
Okay, so I focused mainly on CSS transitions, transformations, and animations. I did the animation and transformation, I use that to fade in the different panes and to trigger the app. It was also triggered with an on-click in the Java function, or in the Java script, excuse me. I did animations on the calendar cells and the time slots. They're triggered on hover and on click, so because it has the on click, it still looks good on mobile. I did transitions on the buttons on the daily schedule page and the scheduling form. And I did the CSS for the radioactive glow animation that has scheduled. Some of the hardest things for me on this was I'm not experienced with HTML inside the JavaScript, and so I had a little bit of a learning curve there, trying to figure out where to put classes and how to figure out how to do that. And I spent probably longer than I needed to on a few things, but I learned a lot from the JavaScript, especially when I was trying to get the checkbox button to line up on the time slots. I spent many hours on the JavaScript moving things around, and it kept breaking the code, so I'd put it back the way it was until I finally figured out to put a div around the button. So it amazed me how simple things really came down to, but it was a learning experience. And I'll turn the time over to Adam.
I started with the database. This is kind of where I needed to start because I couldn't understand the app at first. I had a really hard time understanding the requirements and how we were going to turn into code. So after creating the database, that was kind of a lot easier. I made a lot of mistakes, and my team helped me form it better and how to get it right. Also made the PHP web backend web service for the database, where the AJAX would send stringified JSON. I also did the stringified JSON and the parsing, and then the database would send that back and it would parse it back into a JavaScript object. Did some looping through that in JavaScript to manipulate things on the page so that they would be affected by what the database returned, like the appointments that were already set. I did the local storage for the names and the emails to be compared with the database, whether or not they're glowed or not. And I did the Linux server management. That's the auto-updating to Bluehost from GitHub every minute based on cron jobs. And that's it.
Well, I was just going to make a comment real quick because I noticed that not only Shannon said what was most difficult for us, but maybe I'm speaking for myself, but I think everybody, one of the most difficult things was halfway through the semester just communicating how this is all going to work. So just a big shout out to everybody, especially Chris, for pushing us through, because I'll tell you what, we were a lot more effective at collaborating as a team this last week and a half than I feel like almost the whole rest of the semester. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but that's how I felt.
I would agree with that. I spent a lot of time trying to deliberate how exactly we were going to piece it out, trying to figure out what each person's strengths were. And, you know, at the beginning I asked, okay, so what are you guys interested in? Who wants to do what part? Who wants to help me figure out how this is supposed to fit together? And, I mean, the team, I got to give them props for jumping up and saying, oh, yeah, I'm pretty interested in this. And, you know, especially Jordan, just jumping up there and, you know, I don't know JavaScript very well at all, but I'd love to do something complex in the JavaScript. And if you look at the daily.js, it definitely got complex in a real hurry. Not to say that the calendar itself wasn't as complex, but yeah, that was definitely a lot more on my end. And to contradict Adam just a little bit about the lack of DOM, it's I think the whole thing is a lesson in DOM manipulation. We did a lot to create the cells. We've done a lot to manipulate how they look and how they're populated. And all of that, to me, looks like DOM manipulation, even if all we're doing is wiping out their contents when we switch panes so that only the active pane is visible. and I really want to compliment Shannon on the transitions. The fade in was brilliant, and I just suggested the glow yesterday for pulling the current users' appointments, and she made it happen really quick. And again, Jordan and Adam working together to make it happen on the in the hourly schedule. So I mean, you guys have been a really great team, and probably one of the best teams that I've worked with in an educational and in a professional environment. So my thanks to you guys for pulling through when you did.
Let's end on that note.
And I gotta say, this is the best online class I've ever taken.
Yeah, we've learned a lot. Cool. Anybody else want to add something else? Shannon, Adam, Chris?
No, you guys have been great to work with.
I want to thank you guys as well. This has been awesome. And Chris, you're a really good project manager.
Yeah, they
Okay.
say that the best leaders don't choose leadership, and I can really echo that. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I really did not want the job of leadership. I've not had a good experience with it in prior classwork, either online or otherwise, but you guys have really thrown the curve. I mean, it was an awesome 4 weeks working with you guys on this.
I also feel like everyone was able to do things that they could really excel in. Like Shannon with CSS, and Jordan did awesome with JavaScript, and Chris, you was leading and taking control of the whole thing. I think we can wrap it up unless anyone has anything else to say.
Nope, I gotta help my wife put the baby to bed.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
And a Happy New Year.
That's right. I can say the closing prayer if you guys want.
You want to stop recording, Adam?
Oh, yeah.